Okay, so good evening, everybody. I want to welcome you to our winter weather training webinar for Southern New England CoCoRaHS. And as we advertise, this is also open to anyone else who wants to learn how to report winter weather. The forecast offices in Boston, Albany, and New York also take online reports or social media reports. So we certainly welcome all of you to this webinar. And if you want to join CoCoRaHS, we would love to have you. Always looking for more observers in our part of the network. So it's CoCoRaHS.org. You can go and enter your information and sign up and join us. We'd be happy to have you with us. So I'd like to introduce my co-presenters tonight, if you haven't heard us already. First is Christina and Jen. They're from the Albany Forecast Office and manage the CoCoRaHS program there. They have a little chunk of Southern New England, Berkshire County and Litchfield County, but they also manage for their portion of New York. So welcome to both of them. And doing our presentation tonight will be the one and the only Matt Spies. You probably know him from our newsletters every month that he burns the midnight oil to get out to us. And he actually created most of this presentation today. So I thought it'd be great for Matt to kind of go through all the different things you want to know about observing and especially about reporting as we get into winter weather. So Matt, with that, I will hand it over to you. I know Matt is here. Can you unmute yourself, Matt?
Let's try that again.
There you go. All right. Introducing again. It's Matt
Good
Spies,
evening,
CTFR.
CTFR 9. Thanks, Joe. Thanks, Joe, for putting this together. This has been a real treat to have your office lead this effort, and great to have Jen and Christine on the line. And thank you all. There's over 60 of us on the line here tonight, learning and trying to improve our craft on how to be better snow observers. Snow is a bit tricky, but we got a few slides here to help you walk you through it and clear some things up. As we go through this evening, we got 25 slides. We hope to knock it all off in about a half hour, and the final half hour is for Q&A. So as we go through this, get your questions ready, and we hope to answer them. If not during the first half hour, we certainly will take the time in the second half hour to knock out the questions. Okay, we ready? Set? I threw this picture in. This is from the folks out in Colorado. This is a nice snowy day out in Colorado. Point out a few people who also believe in CoCoRaHS as well. The tall fellow in the center is our founder, Nolan Duskin. Nolan's about 6'5" tall. He's quite a distinguished gentleman when he's in the room. I'm a little tucked in over on the left-hand side with my hood and hat on. The guy to my left is Julian Turner. He puts together the website. A lot of these folks here are various state coordinators. Not going to name them all, but the Utah, North Dakota, Illinois, Oregon, Kansas, Arizona state coordinators are here. A couple of staff members from CoCoRaHS here as well, quality checkers. The gentleman on the right side is Henry Regis. He's the one who puts together all the Weather Talk webinars. This is an extraordinary snowy day in mid-May in year 2017 out in Colorado that I was really pleased and intrigued to be part of. 36 inches of snow in 36 hours. It's a special day in the middle of May. Next slide, please. Introduce us. The four coordinators are out on the phone. Jen and Christina from left to right on the picture on the left-hand side. This is the rain gauge at the National Weather Service in Albany. The folks in the Albany Forecast Office do report for CoCoRaHS. They believe in CoCoRaHS. Jen and Christina believe in CoCoRaHS. So we look forward to having you guys also believe in CoCoRaHS as well. Off on the right-hand side, on the left is Joe, and my face is there on the right-hand side. That's from Joe's office in the Boston Forecast Office. Next slide, please. And another picture of me. Now I'm all dressed up and ready to go. And I encourage you all to be ready to report and measure snow every day, all year round. Every day, all year round, you have an opportunity to measure and report snow. Seems kind of silly, but reality is that the values are there. You can report zeros for a large number of days during the fall, spring, and summer. Yeah, there's a chance of snow coming on Friday, and we have to change gears a little bit and be ready to measure and report the snow as it comes, but you can report snowfall and snow depth all year round. A little phrase that I come up and you guys hear about in my monthly newsletters. It came to me from the folks at the River Forecast Center. Folks in the River Forecast Center, all they ask from the CoCoRaHS observers is to put a ruler in the snow. And I say, come on, there's got to be more to it than that. Yep, in hydrology, if you can just put a ruler in the snow and report snow depth, the hydrologists at the River Forecast Center would be quite happy. So I rebranded ourselves, called ourselves the rulers of the snow. We as human beings have the opportunity to do something unique that no automated piece of equipment can do. We can put a ruler in the snow and report it. Next slide. Another picture of me admiring my rain gauge. Why am I admiring my rain gauge? I'm trying to get all of you on the phone, on this call, to focus on one job before you go charging out and see whether or not you got 3 inches of snow or 6 inches of snow or 9 inches of snow. That first job is to focus on what fell inside your gauge. CoCoRaHS is a precipitation network. What we're primary focus on is finding the liquid content of what falls inside your gauge. And then that gets added up to all your other precipitation measurements that happen all throughout the spring, fall, and summer. Notice how the gauge is oriented. Yeah, it's in my hand, but the funnel and inner cylinder are kept indoors. Take a look at my left hand on your right side. I have 2 metal tools in my hand. I have a metal ruler and I have a metal spatula. Why do I believe in metal tools? Because ice happens. Yes, you'll see a lot of the training slides and videos from the guys in Colorado. They get nice fluffy powder and it stays fluffy powder all winter long, kind of, sort of. But around here, the sun comes out, we get a little bit of thaw, we get a little bit of freezing rain, and the snowpack turns to ice. And plastic tools and plastic rulers don't work well when the snowpack turns to ice. So I've learned over the years, go after metal tools. Your first year doing it, you got a plastic ruler, you got a plastic spatula, go at it, have fun, learn. But over time, you'll get to appreciate, yeah, metal tools work a lot better when the snowpack turns icy. Next slide, please. Here's an example of some plastic tools. The blue tool on the right-hand side is what the Weather Your Way store sells. They call it a snow swatter. But yeah, it's really for Colorado in mind. You'll see with the red spatula there, they want you to sweep off all the snow that doesn't fall inside the gauge, and that is accurate. You should not count anything that doesn't fall inside the gauge. Sweep it away. And the picture on the right shows you how to cut a core measurement off a snowboard with a plastic spatula. But we'll get more. We have some more pictures of that later on. But you can use plastic spatulas or metal spatulas. You need something to slide underneath a cylinder to cut a core measurement when you're ready. That's for the next job that comes up. Next slide, please. And this is the next job. The second job, after you focus on what falls inside the gauge and melt what's in the gauge, then you can go around and start taking snowfall measurements. And there's a picture of me, a picture of my footprints in the snow, walking around that marker with the snowboard and taking some various measurements and walking over to another part on the lawn. We prefer you use a snow measuring board like pictured below in the center here. Some sort of white piece of plywood or white piece of PVC. Something white that won't absorb any heat. Something that's wood that won't, or PVC or some type of material where you can, where it's a hard surface. Do avoid measuring off the raw grass because the grass does have some give into it. And we're trying to get snowfall measurements to the nearest 1/10 of an inch. So measuring off the grass is not the best idea. Also avoid using the back deck, using the back picnic table. Sometimes that's too close to the house, not knowing if you have a 2-story house or a 1-story house, a high-pitch roof or a low-pitch roof. Snow blowing off the roof can come on the deck and come on the back picnic table. So I'd like to get you guys, get your rulers away from the immediate side of the house, go off to an open area, find your snow measuring board and start measuring off of there. But this is the second job, measure the depth of the new snow. Take a few measurements, average your results. Next slide. Then, along with measuring the depth of the new snow to the nearest 1/10 of an inch, yep, keep away from the buildings and trees, like you to sweep your snowboard every 6 hours of snow or immediately after the snow stops. Why? The snow does settle. So I know you guys sleep and work and have other jobs and things like that, and sometimes that's not possible. It's all understood. But if you can, if it's all humanly possible, only sweep your snowboard, clear your board off every 6 hours or so. Not every hour, not every 3 hours. Try to make it every 6 hours and try to do it immediately after the snow stops. After the snow stops, the snow will settle every hour, a couple hours after it stops. Yes, it's understood. You guys have to work. You guys have to sleep. You guys have other activities. Just try to pay attention to the details. You can take a core sample for the water content of the snow. That water content we call the snow water equivalent. Didn't put it here in this slide. SWE, we call it SWE. Doesn't stand for a squealing pig. It stands for the water equivalent of the snow. So take a 4-inch rain gauge, tip it upside down, and you can cut a core, put your spatula underneath it, and then find the liquid content of that core sample. We can tell when you don't do this and report the same as the gauge catch. Some people look at these first 2 jobs and say, you know what? I don't feel like doing 2 jobs. I'm only going to do 1. And I'm just going to go out there, stick a ruler in the snow, put my grain gauge upside down, cut a biscuit, cut a core, and melt it, and call it a day. We'd like you to focus on the first job first, and that is finding out what fell in your gauge. And if you have more time and energy, now find a core sample and find the liquid content of that and the depth of the nearest inch. Do both jobs. Do every step in both jobs. You might find a difference between the core sample on your board versus what fell inside your gauge, especially if there's a mix of precipitation. And around here, we get mixes of precipitation. So when we look over dozens or hundreds of reports, we can tell when you don't do the both jobs and you report the same as a gauge catch. Next slide, please. Here it is. How do you find the water content of the snow? Here it is. We're inside the house now where it's nice and warm. Pass on a couple little tips from me to all of you. Whenever you have depths less than 5 inches of snow, usually about a ½ inch of hot tap water will do the trick in the inner cylinder. Look at that inner cylinder on the left-hand side. See the moisture coming up off the top of it? That's nice hot tap water. It's about a ½ inch. Look at the gauge on the right-hand side. Looks like it's got about an inch or 2. That ½ inch of hot water will definitely melt that inch or 2 of snow. And when you pour it out, it'll fit inside the 1-inch inner cylinder. That's the neat trick. If you have less than 5 inches, about a ½ inch of top tap water will do the trick and keep the result less than 1 inch of water. Subtract out what you poured in. If you ever have snow depths more than 5 inches, surrender and just put in 1 inch of hot tap water and then pour out the rest. It's going to be difficult to get enough hot tap water to melt 5 inches of snow. So you usually use 1.00 hot tap water in the inner cylinder, pour it in, mix it around, get it all liquid, pour out the result, and now you only have to subtract out 1.00. Makes the math real easy. Okay? So why do you do these 2 tips? Because it makes pouring and subtracting much easier. But whatever you do, whatever method you want to take, write down what you do before you pour. It's too many numbers to keep track in your head. Write it down on an index card, piece of paper, and keep track of what you do, and then subtract that when you're done and get the net result. Next slide, please. Having a second set of hands does help. It's tough to do it one-handed with your one hand around the cylinder and the funnel and then pour from the outer cylinder. Having a second outer cylinder does help. And this is a picture on the right-hand side of Nolan Duskin and myself. If you ever get a chance to measure with Nolan, it is priceless because Nolan really appreciates the snow. He marvels at the snow. And this is from the snowy day in Estes Park. I just got done measuring snow back in March and April, and sure, I was all sorts of eager to help out Nolan measure snow in the month of May. I felt like I was in pretty good practice, and a lot of the other people weren't in good practice. So this was a priceless moment for me, measuring out snow with Nolan. But that's how you do it. You get it all liquefied in your outer cylinder, pour it out in the inner cylinder, and subtract out the net result. Next slide, please. We often hear from observers, we don't have enough time for this. There's not enough hours in the day. I got to get to work. I got to get to school. I got to get going. I don't have time to do job one, and that's deal with the gauge. And then job number 2 to measure out the snow and take a core sample. There's got to be a quicker way. There is a quicker way of doing it. You can weigh the snow. A few little gotchas before you get into weighing the snow. You have to know the empty tare weight of your outer cylinders. Look at the gauge on the left-hand side. It weighs 462 grams. Your outer cylinder may vary. It may be a slightly different weight depending on how the plastic and the glue is done. But you have to know what the empty tare weight of your outer cylinders are. Usually take a piece of Scotch tape and write on the bottom the empty tare weight of the outer cylinder. But you can do snow water equivalents by weight only. And the trick is knowing that 1 inch, 1.00 of liquid equals 201 grams. So if you put this on the weigh scale and you have 600 grams, you subtract out the empty tare weight, 462, you're left with a net result of 138 grams. And 138 grams to 201 grams is roughly, without getting a calculator out, it's about 2/3 or 3/4 of an inch. But you can do water equivalent measurements by weight only. If you're interested in building your own tube stand, after enough times of holding the funnel and inner cylinder with one hand, I got to build my own tube stand. Guys are interested in the measurements on how to build a tube stand. It's easy carpentry work. It's not that difficult to do with some material and some wood screws. And as you see the index card on the right-hand side, I mean this, guys. There's too many numbers to keep track in your head. Write down your numbers. Write down what you pour in. Write down what you get out. Subtract the two. Do the math. Write it down. You can't keep it all straight in your head. Next slide. Here's the third job. If you have even more ambition, and this third job you can do almost every day of the year, and that is measure the total depth of snow and ice. All you have to do is get it to the nearest ½ inch. You don't have to be that precise about it. Average a few measurements because snow does settle over time. For those of you living in more icy climates, I know our observer from Plainfield, Massachusetts, has a hole saw on his cordless drill because it is constant ice in the hills of Plainfield, Massachusetts. I cut myself some 4-inch PVC and cut some sawtooth on it with a jigsaw, used a wood rasp and sharpened it up. But I can cut through icy snow if I have to. This isn't plumbing. This is citizen science. So you can build your own tools if you want to, if you find that your own outer cylinder can't cut through the ice. Notice I used a metal pot here. Yep, sometimes you don't have enough cylinders to hold all the core measurements. I sometimes use a metal pot, a simple saucepan, to hold all my core measurements before bringing it inside and melting it down. If anybody's interested in how to build this, you can reach out to me. It's a fairly simple job of finding 4-inch PVC in your home store, a jigsaw and a wood rasp, and a wooden dowel and a through hole for the handle on top. It's a real handy tool. These past couple winters haven't had to use it much, but you never know when you get an icy snowpack. Next slide. Snow depth is the average of snow, including old and ice that remains on the snow at obs time. A lot of these pictures you see here from Colorado. The pictures on the right-hand side are very indicative of what happens to us as we get near the end of the snow season, or when the sun pops out and we don't have much snow on the ground. You get this, what I call blotchy snow. That if you do get blotchy snow, half bare, half covered, yeah, you can take an average, but sometimes you'll end up using your own best judgment, like on the right-hand side, and say, you know what, it's just kind of snow covered here in the shady spots, so I'll just call it a trace. You know, knowledge of this is very helpful to hydrologists to know how much snow is on the ground. These details of trace or an inch or 2 inches or whatever's on the ground is helpful to hydrologists. Again, we are the rulers of the snow. No one else puts, it's tough to find automated equipment to find the depth of snow. And our network does it fairly well. I encourage you to join in and learn how snow comes and goes throughout the year by measuring snow depth every day of the year. Next, if you really want to take a core measurement of the depth of snow, here is a picture of Nolan doing it on grass. Yeah, you can with grass, you end up getting a lot of blades of grass inside the core measurement. But again, you just kind of put the gauge upside down, cut down, slide the spatula underneath, lift it, and flip it, and you got your core sample. For this, I can see from the right-hand picture on the right-hand side, this is the campus weather station in Fort Collins. That's where this picture's from, and it's a picture, definitely a picture of Nolan. We do measure core samples of total depth of snow on Monday. We call it SWE Monday. Rather than doing this ritual on total depth of snow every day of the week, do it once a week. Sometimes I get a head start on it. I'll do it late Sunday night and have it all melted when I wake up on Monday morning. If you guys want to get on it on Monday morning, that's fine. We all kind of agreed network-wise to try to come up with a water equivalent of our snowpack once a week on Mondays, a ritual we call SWE Mondays. Next slide. Again, another illustration on how to cut it in even deeper snow, push down. This is assuming that the snow will stick to the side of the gauge. You can push down to give it a twist and pull up, and yeah, you kind of hope the snow sticks to the side of the gauge. If it's grainy, icy snow, it may not do this. Yeah, on loose powder, it might do this. A lot depends on your gauge, if it's, I call it sticky enough to hold the powder snow. Next slide. Freezing rain. This happens sometimes in our area. When it does, it's unique. We all get worried about power outages and tree limb crashes and things of that nature. Do I hand this off to Jen and Christina and let them talk more about it? This is from my gauge, and the simple way of measuring freezing rain without getting to overthink it too much, you do measure and report it as you would a plain rain event. I'm aware it's going to take you longer to thaw out that rain gauge. When you bring the rain gauge in, it might take a good 15 minutes, a half hour for everything to melt off the sides and kind of melt in the bottom of the gauge. So I'm aware it may take a little more time. You might need some hot tap water to help it along, or put it in a pot of hot water without getting water inside the gauge. Writing down comments with your observation helps if you know you got freezing rain. One tip to pass on to all you guys at this point: do not use a microwave to thaw out your gauge, ever. You will melt the plastic gauge in a microwave oven. So do not use any common appliances to thaw out this gauge. If you know freezing rain is coming, sometimes the bracket will freeze up. I've been able to have fairly good success unsticking my gauge by banging the bottom of the gauge in an upward motion. If you want to get fancy and really execute a lot of forethought, I mentioned something like WD-40 on the bracket might help, or petroleum jelly on the bracket might help. Depending on the extent and depth of the freezing rain, I guess you'll try just about anything to unstick the gauge. And how cold it is, yeah, without getting water in the gauge, maybe a little cup of hot water around the bracket will unstick it. But that's up to you. You have to use your best judgment and do what you feel is best without getting any water inside the gauge. Hand this off to Jen and Christina.
After this one.
Yeah, thanks, Matt.
Okay.
One other thing I would mention is, like Matt said, if you are anticipating freezing rain, one thing I do is I actually take the gauge off the bracket and just put it in a flat area nearby, just because I've actually cut myself before or hurt myself trying to, shimmy off the gauge from the bracket. And in the winter, when my hands are already ice cold, I don't want to deal with it. So if you are anticipating freezing rain, if the weather forecast is calling for freezing rain, I just take it off the bracket and leave it in an open area in my yard. I do have 3 like bricks that I kind of put the gauge around to keep it steady. Of course, if it's windy, it could knock it over, but usually when it comes to freezing rain, the wind typically is light. But just so you don't have to deal with WD-40, you know, if you don't have that nearby, you need kind of a plan B to shimmy off your gauge. Just if the weather forecast is calling for freezing rain, I just take it off and put it, you know, like I said, around 3 cylinder blocks, 3 bricks. So, oh, by the way, I don't think I introduced myself. Oh, yeah, I'm Christina from the National Weather Service office in Albany, New York, and my counterpart is Jen. She and I run the program for Berkshire, or we assist with the program for Berkshire County and Litchfield County, so we work with Joe and Matt. So, yeah, these are just some examples of, you know, how to measure ice. So Matt talked about what to do with the liquid, but when actually coming to measuring the actual ice accretion, ice accretion is a fancy way of saying ice accumulation. They're both synonymous. There's pretty much like 2 ways to measure it. We call one way the flat ice, and the other way is the radial ice. So just so you know, the bottom picture where you see the rain, or I'm sorry, you see the black pole and the ruler, that is flat ice. That's probably on top of some sort of, I think it's from a parking lot. And the top of that is what you want to use, that kind of ice accretion on the top of the pole. That's what you're measuring, and that is flat ice. If you have a picnic table, you have some other flat surface that has ice accretion on top of it, or ice accumulation from freezing rain, and you want to put the ruler next to that and take the measurement, that is what we call flat ice. Another way, which most people are more familiar with this way, is the radial ice way. And that's with the top picture where it has the tree branch. So that way, if you want to measure the ice from a tree branch or another sort of radial surface, like trying to think of something else, might be like a hand railing, like you're walking down your staircase. You might see, if you have your hand railing that's leading down the stairs outside your patio, that might be a radial surface. And radial means like circular. You want to measure it from that surface. That would be called radial ice. Now, for CoCoRaHS, there really is no box. Like there's a box for snow, there's a box for snow depth, and there's a box to enter regular liquid precipitation. Freezing rain does not have a little box via the CoCoRaHS website or the app to actually put in your ice accretion amount. So what we encourage you to do is just to put it in the comment section of your observation. So if you got maybe 1/10 of an inch of liquid, and then the ice accretion on your tree branch was, say, 0.05, you would just put in the comment section 0.05 of ice on my tree branch. It's always important for those when you're reporting your ice, always say what surface you measured it from, because that will let us know if it was flat ice or radial ice, and those two are the way in which we document the ice accretion. It does matter whether you reported from a radial surface or a flat surface. So if you can, please document in your CoCoRaHS comments what surface you used to measure your ice accretion. Personally, I typically do a tree branch because that's kind of easiest for me. But if you have a flat surface that you prefer, you can use that too. So just try to report what your surface was. For the weather forecast from the National Weather Service, we are starting to report more in flat ice. But there's still actually, I just recently learned in the past couple of weeks, it's still kind of back and forth as to whether or not we're going to forecast radial or flat ice. But I think the jury is leaning towards radial ice since that's most helpful for like utility companies and potential power outages. But still, please just let us know which way you're reporting, if you're doing it with the tree branch or if you're doing it with a flat surface. Jen, did you have anything else that you wanted to add?
Not that I can think of. The biggest thing, really, if you submit like a storm report to us, is just include a picture if you can with a ruler, but really just tell us what surface you measure on, and we can do the conversion ourselves. So really, whatever's easiest for you, safety-wise, don't fall. Always be safe. And I guess Christina, you covered most of it. it gets confusing going back and forth. So we don't really care which way you measure as long as you tell us.
Right, and it is, if you can measure the freezing rain, we really, really appreciate those observations, just because from a National Weather Service perspective, if we need to amend the forecast, because of course most people probably know this, but higher terrain areas of the Berkshires, the Worcester Hills, the higher elevations in Connecticut, the Litchfield Hills, they typically get a little more ice accretion in the valley areas, or especially the coast. So those higher terrain folks, your ice accretion really matters, especially when it comes to our forecast. And if we are forecasting a 1/10 to a 1/4 inch and you're starting to get close to 1/2 inch, for us, that's nearing ice storm warning criteria, and we really want to know about it. And so your observations are very crucial for us when we're making warning decisions. So if you can let us know in real time, whether through Facebook, Twitter, you want to email us, follow NWS Boston or follow NWS Albany, and you can let us know, hey, I live in the Worcester Hills and I'm approaching 1/2 inch of ice. We want to know about it, and you can let us know you're a CoCoRaHS observer. That way we can get, we know where you're located. It really is helpful in real time to know, especially for those higher terrain areas, that you're getting a lot of ice, because that can have major implications when it comes to power outages.
All right, thanks, Christina and Jen. And Matt, I will hand it back over to you. Oh, we may have lost Matt, actually. It says he's offline. So you know what? I'll pick it up from here. Okay, I think we lost Matt. He looks like he's offline, so I'll take it from here. So step one, again, is to observe. So we want things like the water equivalent of the new snow. That's the snow that fell that you melt down and report in precipitation, which I'll show all the entries in a minute. The new snowfall is the depth of new snow off your snowboard or another surface to the nearest 1/10 of an inch. The melted new snowfall, snow core, remember that's placing your gauge upside down on your snowboard. The total snow and ice on the ground is your snow depth to the nearest 1/2 inch. And then what Matt says was the SWE. We do each Monday. That's the snow water equivalent of the total snow on the ground. And when you report on your daily form, this should look pretty familiar. This is where we put the entries, and I'll show in the next slide, we'll actually show it a little bit clearer. But again, okay, accuracy matters. We tend to see most of the mistakes happen with reporting, not with measuring, putting the wrong number in the wrong box. And as Matt mentioned, comments help. If you can add some extra comments about what you're observing, that's very helpful. So I'm going to show on this slide kind of the same thing, but again, this is kind of breaks it down. The water equivalent of the new snow that fell goes in the typical rain and melted snow box. That's the one we report just about every day. New snowfall goes in the second section in the blue box. That's your new snow accumulation. And then the melted value from the core goes just below that. And then for your snow depth, your total snow and ice goes in the first box. And on SWE Mondays, the melted core value of all the snow and ice on the ground goes into that last box. And again, comments help. Feel free to put comments in about whatever you're observing. It also makes a nice record for your particular station. So we're going to finish up just looking at the two different apps. The first one is the Android app, and let's see. I think Matt might be back on. Matt, do you want to take it from here?
Yeah, I'm back on.
Okay, yep, we got you. I will hand it back to you. Go ahead.
Fair enough. All right, folks. We know about the numbers about 20%, 25%, maybe high as 30% of you use a mobile app. We're not sure whether it's Android or Apple, so we'll just go through both of them, cover both bases right here and now. Because all the reported values can't fit on one screen, there are two screens to the mobile app. Here on the Android, it says click to specify snow and flooding information. So job one, your gauge catch goes in the first value, but then you have to click on specify flooding info to get the second screen to come up. And here where the next four values are, the snow and the melted core for the snow, and then what your total depth is to the nearest 1/2 inch and the core for that. Fill in what you have measurements for. If you don't have a measurement for it, leave it NA. Yes, we're not asking you to do a core measurement on total snow and depth every day. Usually when there's snow on the ground, usually leave that fifth value NA. Unless I feel ambitious and it's going to melt or it's Monday or something like that. But most times when there's snow on the ground, I'll leave that fifth value, that very last value, NA. Click to the next slide to go to the iPhone app. Very similar, except that in here, a lot of the defaults are already NA with the Apple app. And the other difference is you got to click on more details to get to the second screen. And your comments is also on the second screen with the iPhone app. A little different than the Android app. Again, same rules apply. Fill in what you have measurements for. Leave the rest NA. Comments do help. We're going to wrap this up with a bunch of little tips. First off, safety first, fellas. None of this is worth getting hurt for. If you don't feel it's safe out, you can wait. You don't have to go out charging every morning, at 6 a.m., 7 a.m. if it's a sheet of ice or it's snowing 3 inches an hour or something like that. If you want to wait it out, there's nothing wrong in doing that. Just be safe about what you're doing. Be dressed, have good footwear on, gloves, hat. Make sure you're safe first before you go out and measure. You might have to make multiple measurements within a 24-hour period. You might have to make a measurement when it stops. You might have to make a measurement when it changes over from snow to rain. But, it's not like plain old rain where you just go out and measure it once. You might have to do it multiple times in a 24-hour period. And whenever you measure, however you measure, write it all down. Subtract out the amounts you pour in. Have a written record with all this snowfall and liquid equivalent stuff. You can't keep it all in your head. So write it down, look at it before you fill out your report. And this is a very common error. I saw it on Tuesday in New Mexico. A couple hundred snowfall reports in New Mexico and 3, 4, 5 little red dots standing out on the map in New Mexico because they make the very common snow reporting error. They take the snowfall value and put it into the first value. This is why I say time and time again, focus on the gauge catch. We're not about how much snow fell. We're after how much liquid fell inside your gauge. That is job one. Focus on job one and put the result of job one inside the first value. We also get other decimal point errors. They might seem silly, innocuous, whatever, but when you're off by a factor of 10, either high or low, it does stand out when we look at dozens or hundreds of reports. Accuracy does matter. Your snowfall reports end up in a national snow database. I don't have 2 hours to show you around this national snow database. You'll have to read some of the newsletters coming up. But your reports do go far and wide. Be accurate about what you key in, please. Next tip. This happens all too often around here, especially with lake effect snow coming off of Lake Ontario and Lake Erie, finding its way down I-90 and into our area. That you'll sometimes see snow flurries in the air. When that happens, report a trace. You got to report 2 T's, a trace for the precipitation and the trace for the new snow. This doesn't happen as often, but snow can melt as it falls. It's one of those wet kind of spring days, and it's snowing out, but it's not sticking to the pavement because the pavement's too warm and all that sort of stuff, and then it stops. So again, job one, focus on what fell inside your gauge, report that melted precipitation, but the fact that snowflakes were in the air, report a trace for new snow. If you're fortunate enough to have a second outer cylinder, a tip that I like to share is cold soak it. Leave it outdoors, but out of the precipitation. By having that plastic gauge cold for a half hour, hour before you go out and measure, it won't stick to the inside of the gauge. You might find it better to work with if your second cylinder is left out cold. So that's another subtle tip to pass on to you with the craft of being a snow observer, is having a second cylinder, but also have it cold. And there's probably a fistful of scenarios we didn't think of. Snow changing over to rain, back to snow, all this sort of stuff. Snow that stops at 10 o'clock in the morning, but I'm stuck at work. I can't get home and measure it, and all this sort of stuff. All we ask from all of you folks is just do the best you can. Make the best effort you can. Focus on your gauge catch. If you can report new snowfall, that's great. If you can cut biscuits and find cores, that's even better. And if you can report snow depth every day, even all the better. Just do the best you can. We know it's hard work. It's cold. It's dark. It's slippery outside. We're asking a lot. We may seem like we're asking a lot. We just ask it overall, just do the best you can with it. Next slide. I think we're nearing the end. A few supplemental reports. Sometimes your eyes and ears can be very helpful. Sometimes that morning report, the severity of the storm may have already passed. We have significant weather reports out there that are on the website, and they serve as a real-time alert to your National Weather Service forecast office. And depending on which county you're in, it might alert a neighboring forecast office as well. What the criteria we're looking for is if you happen to get an inch of snow in 1 hour or less, or 1 inch or more of snowfall in 1 hour or less, please fill out and submit one of these significant weather reports. It goes to the forecast office. They know what's going on in real time. When you happen to get more than 3 inches of snow, fill one of these out, submit it, and then fill out your normal precipitation report. Your final total as well. You might think, well, I'm just going to submit my morning report. They'll see that. Well, they may not see that. They may not see that in time. They may not see that for another hour or two. If you submit it in real time, they're going to get alerted in real time. If you get a change in precipitation type, yep, that happens around here too. Snow changes to rain, rain changes to snow, and all that sort of stuff. If you got a change in precip type, fill one of these reports out. Don't have to get too crazy with the numbers. Put in the observation note, hey, change over from rain back to snow. It's snowing pretty, it's snowing pretty good now. Boom. Anything else you feel important, these reports alert the Weather Service forecast desk in roughly 1 minute's time. We're serious about this. These reports work. These reports are valuable. Take the chance and fill out a supplemental report. I got a word for it. I call it, I got to phone it in. Now, I know it's not a phone, but we're way beyond phone days now. But these supplemental reports do work, and they alert the forecasters right away. Next screen. Droughts do not take the winter off. There's another supplemental report out there called Condition Monitoring Report. The catchphrase we have for that is 1 report a week is all that we seek. Because, yes, these are a weekly designed report, usually designed for the weekend, because the drought monitor folks come in to work on Monday morning, and they're trying to assess drought or flood conditions throughout the continental United States and beyond, even the North American continent. So if you can say that, hey, we got a lot of snow recently, we're getting snow on snow on snow, or the converse, hey, it's been kind of dry. We haven't any snow or rain in the past 2-3 weeks. Anything like that are valuable words to folks who assess the drought situation across the continent. If you need more guidance on this, ask us. These are valuable reports. We are in a bit of a drought condition, so people's attention are even higher, but droughts do not take the winter off. We hope we get recharged during the winter months, but we may not. Next slide. Another valuable app that you can download for your mobile device called MPing, stands for Meteorological Phenomena Identification Near the Ground. It's to basically say that, hey, we realize that radar's not perfect. It can't pick up everything near the ground. How about you submit us a real-time report with your mobile device and let us know if it's raining or drizzling or snowing or whatever, and you can do this in real time. The folks inside the forecast office may have the map of reports up so they can see what's happening in real time. This is a neat project. I encourage you all to participate in it if you have a GPS mobile device. And at this point, we're a little over time. Next slide. That's it, folks. One thing we like about doing these webinars, newsletters, emails, it keeps a conversation going. And yep, at 4 o'clock this afternoon, I had a conversation going on with Nolan. We like to have conversations with all of you guys. So it doesn't matter whether it's snow, hot, rain, cold, whatever, keep this conversation going. This is why we have these webinars and do this outreach work with all of you. Thank you all for attending tonight. We'll take your questions.
All right. Matt, thank you, and thanks to Christina and Jen also. So at this point, we invite you to hang around. We're going to answer some of the questions in our chat. So first one, let's see, John had a suggestion. I found putting Crisco on the bracket helps prevent the gauge from freezing to it. There you go. So something else you can use, as long as you're not baking, I guess. Question from Ryan. I live in an area, eastern North Carolina coast. Well, welcome, Ryan. Without much snow. So once in a season, we get a snowfall. In those cases, should I do a snow water equivalent measurement on that day instead of waiting until Monday? I would say yes, Matt.
I agree.
Yep. Sure. Definitely.
We say Monday, so you're not constantly cutting biscuits all week long. But if you're lucky enough to get a snowfall during the middle of the week, by all means, take that total snowfall depth, cut a biscuit, find out what the water equivalent is of your total depth of snow. Absolutely.
Yep. And the same holds true here. If we know, say, in the springtime, we've got a good snowpack on the ground and maybe there's a warm rain coming, I'll sometimes do an extra SWE just before the storm, just so we get some good data in there too. So you're free to do that whenever you like, not just on Mondays. Okay. From Christine, I'm an old-fashioned write-on-paper kind of girl. Is there a printed format list where I can fill in 5 different snow variables?
Yes. Go to the website. There's, I don't know if you can bring it up here, Joe, but I'll point you to it. It's a section called Printable Forms.
On the CoCoRaHS website?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
I don't know if you can do that here and now, or you're stuck in the slideshow.
No, we can do that. Let's go CoCoRaHS.
www.cocoRaHS.org.
Yep.
Printable forms on resources, a little bit lower.
Right there.
A little bit lower, right there. Click on it. And now how to rain snow form. Let's take that second one. Here you go. All five numbers.
Bingo. So there it is.
Look at the upper right-hand corner. It says month 11, year 2001. So this is an old form, but it does work. You got all 5 values here on this. And you can make your own too. I'm trying to read sideways here. Actual observation. So it's an obs time, 24-hour gauge amount, snowboard core. Yeah, the second and third value is kind of flipped around. But it's got 5 values. Just read it sideways. The second and third value are flipped around. But to answer your question, yes, there is a form there. And if you click around, you might be able to find more forms.
Yep. Okay. Well, that's good. It exists. So let me put the picture of you and Nolan back on because we like that. Okay.
Okay.
All right. So let's go back to some of the questions here from our friend Pete. Let's see. Total snow to the nearest half inch. If you have greater than 4/10,
call it a half inch.
That would be a half inch. Anything.
Call it a half inch.
Yeah, and anything less, so a point, like 2/10 would be, total snow would be, well, that would be on the ground. So 2/10 on the ground would be a trace.
I'd
correct?
call it a trace. Yep.
Yeah. Okay. Hope that answers your question there, Pete. From Danny, I may have an issue. I work landscaping in the winter. We do snow plowing. I'm out whenever it changes over. Any advice on how I report that when I get back?
Focus on the gauge catch.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, and do the best you can, Danny. If there's been a lot of melting, yeah, just focus on the gauge catch. You can do a snow depth and just say, snow ended a few hours ago. This is what was left on the board. That's fine too, I think, right, Matt? As long as we have.
I agree.
Just put a comment in there and let us know.
You've got a job of that nature, where you're out there plowing snow and things like that, to be able to measure and report snow accurately, because part of your job is try to remove the snow.
Right. And I'm sure Christina and Jen can. I've been times when I've been at the office and the snow stops at noon and I don't get home until 5 o'clock. So we just do the best we can. I may have someone at home who can help. I have some helpers, but just like I said, put a comment in, do your measurement, and that's fine. So whatever we can get, we will take. All right. From Nicholas, can you put the snow core measurement as the daily precipitation if the gauge isn't representative of what fell? That's a good question. So say, Matt,
I
it's
would
a
say
windy
yes.
storm. Yeah.
Yep, horizontal snow.
Yep.
When in the
Exactly.
case of horizontal snow, wind-blown snow, yeah, you guys out in Cape Cod and coastal Rhode Island getting horizontal snow, then yeah, the core measurement off the snowboard, you substitute that in for your gauge catch. Yes.
Right. And Nicholas, I've had that issue too with some storms where I know the gauge catch is low. I'll put it in my comments saying gauge catch was too low, using the amount off the snowboard, something like that. But yeah, good question. Also from Nicholas, can you measure snow depth on grass?
Yes, you can. Just be sensitive to how much give is in the grass.
Okay. And one more from him. When there's freezing rain, should you take the inner cylinder out? Absolutely. And in fact,
Yes.
whenever temperatures are going to be near freezing, take it out just to be safe because it can crack. So most of the winter time, you're going to have the inner tube and the cylinder inside. So
You're going to have a mess on your hands on that funnel. That funnel's going to get coated in ice, and it's going to be even more effort to get a liquid measurement. It probably won't cake up or affect the measurement, but it's going to be more time, more effort to get it all melted and in the inner cylinder. Anytime you feel the temperature is going to dip below freezing, funnel and inner cylinder come indoors. Leave the gauge out there with the outer cylinder only. And we're going to get some below freezing weather here, a couple of hard freezes Thursday night, Friday night, Saturday night. Be ready to take measurements of the rain that comes, whatever snow that comes, and bring cylinders inside, leaving the outer cylinder on the post.
all right. Good advice. Our friend Jeff in Staffordville, Matt,
Yay, Jeff.
wants our take on the winter's weather, thinking above normal. Well,
we're climatologists now, eh, Jeff? All right, here we go.
yeah.
I could always go safe by saying above normal air temperatures, because
Right.
that's what we've been getting for the past bunch of years.
Right. Yeah, the Climate Prediction Center is above average temperature and equal chances of above normal below precip. But I would say to Jeff and everybody else, our pattern, our weather patterns are really not predictable more than I'd say 2 weeks or so out in time. They're we don't really have good correlation with La Nina, El Nino. There's some, but it has to do more with other circulation. So, Jeff, I would say the odds are for an above average temperature, but we'll use the dartboard on the precip, so we'll have to just wait and see. Some La Ninas are dry and cold, others are dry and cold and mild and can be actually a little snowy. So,
Yeah,
I'll
and
stay
I
up in
think
the air.
it's tough to get 2 snow-free years in a row. What happened last year was a bit of an aberration, and they do happen once a while in a decade. But I think it's gonna be tough to get 2 dry years like we had last year, 2 in a row like that.
Yep.
So we'll see.
Yeah, it doesn't happen much. So, all right. Another one from Nicholas. Can you do a significant weather report to share ice accretion? Absolutely. And I probably should have put that on that slide. I was thinking of it as you were showing it, Matt. Yeah. Anytime you're getting freezing rain, let us know. Anything you want us to know, throw it in there. That's fine. From Jelena, how are comments used? What type of comments are most valuable? I would say any and all. At our office, we look at them most days just to kind of see is there anything interesting going on. It's a good way to maybe describe some other conditions, weather throughout the day. Matt, anything else? Comments?
I can go on for 15 minutes on this. Comments, your visual, your hands-on, boots on the ground take on what happened. How are they used? They're used to verify your precipitation amount. If we get 1/100 of an inch or we get 5 inches of precipitation, we'll sometimes look at a comment and basically saying, are you sure you got that amount? Are you sure you got 100th? You sure you got, because nobody else got 100th? Are you sure you got 5 inches of rain because everybody else got 3 inches? That we're always looking at comments as are you sure, as a double check on what goes on. They serve as a written record. You're going to see them in your water year summary. There's a bunch of people who are innately curious about observations. The network average on comments is 1 in 9. That's a very low number. Click on 9 reports, you'll only find 1 comment. Our area is a little bit better. It's about 1 in 6 or 1 in 5, but it's never much better than that. I like to see it around 1 in 2. Whenever you get precipitation, put in a comment. That way we know we're sure, you're sure that what you're reporting is the right value, because we don't know if you made a mistake in reporting or not. So comments are extremely valuable. They do get looked at. They're part of your narrative, your water year summary, and they do nothing but help clear up potential mistakes.
All right.
Yeah. I just want to make a comment on the
Sure.
comments. When it comes to sleet, Joe, I don't know how you guys do it at Boston, but when it comes to sleet, we do want to know how much sleet you got versus how much snow you got. And oftentimes the comments really can help identify, okay, their total amount of snow and sleet was, say, 4.2 inches, but 3 of that was snow and 1.2 was sleet. So for us, just from a understanding the event perspective, if you can actually identify and give us the amount of snow versus sleet, and you could put that in your comments, that is very helpful for us, just because oftentimes it just kind of lumped together, and we do want to know the difference between snow and sleet if you can give it to us. Again, as Matt mentioned before, we understand you all have lives. Your life can't just be looking at the snowboard and identifying different precipitation types, but if you have the opportunity and you can tell us, hey, we got X amount of inches that was snow, and then it finished off as 0.3 inches of sleet, put it in the comments box, and that would be just the separation of the two precipitation types. If you want to mention that it was wind-blown snow, if there was snow drifts that were up to 2 feet, you can put that in the comments box too. Just knowing the snow drifts, also helpful. Also impacts, if you want to mention that your backyard had a bunch of down branches due to heavy wet snow on trees or ice or whatever the case might have been. If you want to mention impacts and what happened in your own neighborhood or your own area, whether it's multiple car accidents, multiple school closings, power outages, you want to talk about impacts in your area that you have observed, let us know. We do look at the comments, and it's good to know what actually happened impact-wise for where you live.
Excellent. Yeah, I agree, Christina. The more info, the better. So, perfect. Okay, from Greg, how do you properly do the multi-day precipitation report on the Android app? Matt, I don't believe you can, right? Multi-day?
I think you can.
Multi-day on the app?
It's there.
Oh, okay. I stand
Absolutely.
corrected.
It's there. How to do it accurate is the question. How to do it accurately?
How do you properly do the multi-day precipitation report?
I'll pull it up.
I would say make sure your start and end dates are correct.
That's the common mistake. Get the start and end dates right. But multi-day precipitation, make sure you get the start date right and the empty date right, and fill in all the other stuff. Precipitation, depth of snow on the ground, core, traces. It's only a single page on the multi-day app on Android. There's no room for a comment. But the most common mistake is getting the first and the empty date correct.
Right.
So if your last report was the 26th, your first day is the 27th, and then the date emptied is the date in which you did the obs, as well as the time you did the obs, and go from there. But the common mistake is to say, I stopped reporting on the 26th, so my first day is the 26th. No, your first day is the next day, the 27th. Common mistake. And that's when you get errors saying, hey, wait a minute, you already have a report for the 26th. And people get confused by it, like, what's going on here?
Okay. From Harriet, please review. SWE goes into which box, and that is measured only once a week. It goes into the last.
For the once a week one.
Yep.
The last one.
Yep, and it's the last box on the form.
Yep. But there is another SWE measurement, and that's for the new snow only. Off your snowboard, that's the third measurement.
Right, and that's in the second section under the new snow. So,
yep, part of job 2.
Correct. From Scott, is a car roof a reasonable snowboard? Ooh, Matt.
I would say not, because car roofs now are not flat. They're so aerodynamic that there's hardly anything flat about a car roof anymore. it's a good start. I'm not going to poo-poo it, but it's a good starting point. You can look at it there, but try to get out in the open area, open grass, open whatever, and try to measure off of there. But
Okay.
the car, because it's subject to wind, and cars are built to be aerodynamic now. They're, to their credit, they're more fuel efficient than they were in the past. But for a detriment, it's tough to get it as a flat surface.
Okay.
And you have to ask yourself, when's the last time you started up your car? How hot was the car when the snow started?
Exactly. Okay.
Think about that one.
Right.
Okay? Give that a little bit of thought.
Okay. Here's one for you, Matt. This is from Dale. Can you talk about dew and frost reporting? We get that one a lot.
What to know about dew? I'm aware there's a frost report off the CoCoRaHS site. I've never used it. Frost and dew are not precipitation. Leave it out. Do not be tempted to say it's a trace or a hundredth. Right? Resist that temptation. Make sure that you have some sort of confirming cue that you had precipitation before putting a trace or a hundredth. Make a note that you had frost or dew on the gauge. That's helpful to read about, so that we know that there's condensation in the air and it's squeezed out on the grass and it's squeezed out on your gauge and so on and so on. But do not report it as precipitation. Make a note of it in your comments.
Okay. Good. From Jeff, snow core readings taken after each storm. Is it okay to take this reading off the ground instead of the snowboard?
Just be careful of grass depth.
Yep.
Be careful.
Yeah, I would
It's the
agree.
best thing I can say to you.
Yep.
Is that there is some give in the grass. So usually with total snow depth, I might go after the grass and not the board. But new snow, be careful. Be careful of the grass depth, or I'll call it the give in the grass.
Right. Okay, and just a couple more questions here. From Michael, do you report sleet accumulations to the nearest tenth or half an inch? And that would be tenth of an inch. It's reported like snow is.
Sleet. Yep. Treat sleet like snow.
Right. And our last one from Christine. What is a multi-day precip report? Some of our newer observers may not be familiar with that.
All right. Fair enough. Multi-day precipitation report. The network is built on daily precipitation reports. But we realize as we're putting together the network that not all of you are going to be chained to your house 7 days a week, 52 weeks out of the year, 365 days a year. That you have a right to travel, you have a right to go on vacation, you have the right to care for a loved one, you have the right to be somewhere else for a period of time. So we realize, hey, we still want to capture your data. Is there a way we can capture your data if you take a weekend off or a week off or a couple of weeks off? So they built something called a multi-day accumulation report. It's a separate report. It's available on the app. It's available on the website. If you're away from your gauge for more than a few days, fill out and submit a multi-day accumulation report. It's kind of like, you guys are in this mode of absentee ballots. It's like an absentee ballot without being that far absent. But it's to say that, hey, I was out for a few days and I missed a few observations. Here's what happened in the days that I was out. And sometimes a multi-day obs can come in handy if you have a big bad snowstorm, big bad ice storm, and you say, I'm not going out in this. Well, I'll report a multi-day the next day and wait for the sun to come out. But a multi-day report is a nice bridge to use if you're not around in any given day. You have the right to take a vacation. You have the right to get sick. You have the right to take care of a loved one. You have the right not to be chained to your house 7 days a week, 52 weeks out of the year.
All right. Sounds good. So with that, that's the last of our questions. I want to thank Matt and Jen and Christina.
Thanks, Joe, for putting this together.
Yep. And just a reminder, this is being recorded. I will share the link with all of you once it's up and running. If you have any questions, maybe you'll think of something later tonight or tomorrow, my email address is on your webinar confirmation, so you can just send me the question. I will work with Matt and we will get an answer to you, or maybe Christina and Jen, I'll work them into it too. So again, we want to thank all of you for being a real active part of our CoCoRaHS network. As Matt and I like to say, we're one of the more active corners of the entire network here in Southern New England. So thank you so much for your dedication and strong reporting. I know during these COVID times, it can be difficult, but we really appreciate everyone's enthusiasm, and we're setting records pretty much every month now, Matt. So
here. That's right.
So
you guys are great.
Yep. So thanks to all of you again, and thanks to our friends from the Albany office for joining. And we will be in touch through newsletters and email.